All right, our second topic to get today. The NCAA had a historic settlement, or has agreed to a historic settlement as a result of several class action lawsuits. Essentially, the NCAA has been operating as a cartel, and it's been deterred. It's been seen that this cartel is very much illegal in terms of federal antitrust and all that. And it's anti a lot of principles espoused by people in the U.S. as far as markets and stuff like that. This is about the NCAA has been selling for huge sums of money the television rights and just making a lot of money on college athletics and not sharing any of that money that's being made with the players, and in fact setting up rules that prevent the players from participating in that. And that has been deemed to be over time, more and more that is whenever that's challenged in court, it's deemed to be illegal. So there's current lawsuits some that are being settled now that essentially the NCAA is agreeing to pay back damages to individuals who played who did not get to participate in revenue, and that's over a couple $1 billion. And also moving forward, they're going to share revenue with athletes, presumably the athletes that are generating the revenue, but that part hasn't been determined yet. So it's essentially the fall of amateurism as it has existed in the NCAA for over 100 years. And so, I mean, this is a big deal. But many are still wondering what to make of it. So, Tunde, you were a professional athlete in the NCAA, as I can say now.
That doesn't sound right.
Where's my money?
No, that's what I was going to say. I wasn't because I never got paid. So there. It's interesting. I mean, obviously, having been an NCAA athlete, it's hits home a bit. And what I find interesting, I'm looking at the article here. The agreement would pay compensation to close to 25,000 athletes who attend 363 Division I colleges. And it's funny, when I was playing ball 25 years ago, whatever, I think there was 305 Division I schools. So, how many keep growing this thing? But look, it's an interesting. I mean, just thinking about it. I mean, I think that the mechanics of how people get paid and all that, it's obviously that's got to get worked out. What's fair, what's not fair.
A lot. Who gets paid, how they get paid, all that.
How much, and which sports, right? Because they're talking about now the higher revenue ones like baseball and football.
Basketball, football, women's basketball, men's basketball, and women's basketball, and then football are the big. Yeah,
but other athletes work hard, and it's not easy. And so, that's why I think it's good to see it in one way. The hope is that, like we're talking about, that there's fair compensation for everyone, and whatever that means, because that doesn't mean everyone gets paid the same. It just means that that it doesn't get tipped into just a few schools that are making all this money or paying people very well, and then other schools aren't able to attract those kind of athletes. So I think all that will be interesting to see.
But I mean, obviously competitive balance means something, but you say that, but that's a very communist way to look at things, because that's like in a market system, that's kind of how it's supposed to work, is the better you are or the more money you can generate, then the more you should get paid. I mean, but again, that's from a competitive balance and just a roster building, like professional sports have had to deal with this. They have minimum salaries and maximum salaries in the NBA and all this other type of stuff. So they're going to have to be people come up with mechanisms on how this is going to work in a way that is sustainable and agreeable to people on the university side and the player side.
Yeah, and there's other things too that's interesting as we're talking here, like, because think about it, the traditional idea of a kid getting a full athletic scholarship to a good institution. I mean, some of these institutions aren't cheap, right? It might be $1,000 a year tuition. So you're getting that, you're getting a meal plan, you're getting room and board, and your books paid for.
Yeah.
A lot of people would argue that student athletes have been compensated for a long time.
And that's been the argument. But now, from a legal standpoint, that argument is a complete loser, though, because it's not bargained for. Like if you work at Walmart and Walmart just lets you get, some free great value products and that's it, and they don't pay you, that you don't get to argue about that. That's what's set across the board by all retail. Then you would not say, I bargained for exchange. The ability to negotiate and bargain is a part of the market system, and that many Americans claim to value, And so, yes, the fact that you're compensated doesn't necessarily mean that you are a fair participant in the market. If price fixing or wage fixing is one of the most egregious things that monopolies do.
Yeah. And that's
which
the
is
thing,
essentially
is that,
setting compensation at a scholarship for everybody is and that's why the NCAA loses, and that's why they settled this case, is because there's just no way to defend that under antitrust principles and under the principles of market economies.
Yeah, and that's what it was interesting, because I read in the article that they were, talking about creating a certain classification of employee for these student athletes.
Yeah,
so
congressionally, like they would want to do that with legislation. Yeah,
no, and that's what's interesting, because then you think about, I'm not saying this is a reason not to. I'm just thinking there's new wrinkles that people got to think about, because you'd be 18, 19 years old thinking about paying taxes and how all this stuff relates to. Now you really are an adult. So it's an interesting way that kids are going to be able to experience the transition from, high school to adulthood while playing sports, having to deal with the W-2 and, election withholding and all that kind of stuff, and group benefits and things that they'll be eligible for. So, look, I think, like you said, in a economy and a country where the culture is market based and people get compensated for showing up and doing something, this was probably inevitable, and
I think it's a good thing. But let me tell you this: I think where we're going to run into trouble with this. I think this is unequivocally a good thing. But where we're going to run into trouble is, what are the players being paid for? Because I would argue that the actual fact of showing up and playing the sport should not be the basis of the compensation. The reason I think that this got all out of whack is television money. The players who are generating the money here, they're not basketball players. They're not football players. They are entertainers. They're television product performers. If you're just talking about the money that's being made in the arenas, maybe you can go a little further when you say the jerseys and so forth. But if you're just talking about the ticket sales and so forth, that's no different than a band member or a person who's part of an orchestra in college and they do performances at a concert hall. We don't expect them to then get a piece of those receipts. That's just part of the college experience. So where this all went crazy was when the conferences and then the universities participating through conferences started signing $1 billion TV contracts and then rearranging the whole sport, football and basketball, around these TV contracts. So if I think where the compensation should be coming from and where the compensation should be based on is eyeballs on TVs. If ESPN or any number of whatever network wants to pay $5 billion or $2 billion a year, whatever the number is going to be, to the Big Ten, and say, okay, we want to broadcast this, this, and this, and this, and this, then anybody who's showing up on a TV, whether you're on the court or not, you should be participating in that. Because at that point, you're not a college participating in intercollegiate athletics. You are a television performer. And I think I don't hear that talked about enough, but I think that's the insight that we're missing here, because that's where this is distinct. Now, that also solves a lot of the problems of which sports gets paid, but that's what's created the issue. That's how we solve the issue, is base this on, if you're on if is your sport being sold to television networks or otherwise broadcast on TV, and is revenue coming from that? You can get into, there is an issue of jersey sales and so forth, but that's a much smaller number than the billions of dollars that have been made on television. So to me, that's where we have to be looking. If you really want to address this in a way that makes sense and is fair, again, that solves all the problems of which sports and men's and women's, and because of any women's sports that are, if it's on TV, they should be participating in the television money. And to me, that also solves the problem of big school, small school, everything. If you don't want to pay your athletes, don't put it on television. And if universities are willing to say, yeah, we'll just stage these in our arena, and that's it, then you can have, the quote unquote amateurism from that standpoint. You still can't stop the name, image, and likeness, which we've talked about in the past and is all over, where you can that's your ability to sell endorsements and stuff. You still can't stop that, as been determined by law. But television, again, that's the big shining thing here that really needs to be guiding the decision making as we move forward, as I see it in this.
Yeah. As you're talking, it makes me realize the coaches, I'll stick with basketball and maybe football because I know those sports better, but it seems that the coaches have, the system already figured that out with the coaches, as you're saying, about the TV rights and the money. Because if you look at the famous coaches like the Nick Sabans or the Mike Krzyzewskis or the Rick Pitino types from basketball. Yeah. They all got paid, crazy,
what they
$5-10
get
million
paid
salaries.
Well, think about it. What they get paid is a great point. What they get paid, I'll let you back in. It's an excellent point. What they get paid, what those coaches at Alabama football or whatever gets paid is millions and millions, is so much more. It's not even on the same scale as what a fencing coach will make at that same university. You see what I'm saying? Like, because those sports generate money on TV, and the more money the more you're doing on TV, you're more valuable. Those sports, the coaches get compensated much more handsomely as well. But
fencing teaches great life skills.
Hey, I'm with it, man. All of the sports do. All of the sports do. But to me, that's why it going from just a sport to an entertainment product, I think, is the key distinguishing factor because of that. Because sports in general, yes, they're character building. A lot of good things come from sports. I think, a lot of our society, like we can see, like if you play sports, then you lose something. It's not the end of the world because you just work and try to win the next one. That teaches you that in sports.
You sure? So you won't lose a game and then try and say that I won the game, even though there's no proof that you won?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Even though that the film says, it shows the score and everything?
Okay. Exactly. Those are people that should have played sports when they were young.
Yeah. Seems like a lot of people are doing this with other stuff in our country, but at least sports, it's not happening yet anyway.
Well, like you said, it's all on tape.
Yeah.
But you see, in other areas, it could be on tape.
Yeah, that doesn't matter sometimes. But anyway, So cool.
Well, and so the other thing I want to ask you about with this, and I mean, this is kind of addressed with my point, is that from the standpoint of like other sports, like one of the things about the excess money. Now, the footballs and basketballs have generated excess money for a long time. And so three things have benefited from that, while it basically taken the place of the money that would have went to the athletes. Coaches make crazy amount of money. College coaches make as much in many cases as professional coaches, which college, that's crazy, that they would do in a nonprofit, quote unquote, entity, that they would make as much as the pros. The coaches have gotten, and the administrators, and then, whether that be university administrators, sports administrators, or conference administrators have gotten a lot of money that, would not have happened in a kind of setup that was, if it was what they said it was, in terms of, hey, this is just an amateur type of thing. The other group that has benefited substantially from this are the Olympic sports and the non-revenue generating sports. So they essentially use the money that some of the money that could have went to the players, or maybe rightfully should have went to the players, and funded other sports, funded your lacrosses or your different things. That's not an Olympic sport, but just in general, funded other sports that were deemed to be beneficial, but that you can't sell a TV contract for or sell out an arena for and make money. So do you think that the direction we're going here is unfair to those sports? Or, what's your take on that? Because if that money is going to go where I would say rightfully belongs, people who are generating it, or more of it at least, then somebody's going to get the short shaft. So what do you think about that?
I don't know. I don't have an opinion on it because, look, I could see arguments on the various sides of it. I think that it's true that for a lot of the higher revenue earning schools that earn a lot of revenue from their sports programs, it's not just the other sports. It's like the whole campus. You look at some of the real estate development on the campus, buildings, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. A lot of that has happened because of the football or basketball revenue. Well,
let me ask you the question in a different way, because I want to let me throw this at you, and then we'll get out of here after we hit this point. But so if there is a group that historically has had advantages that were unfair by taking advantage of another group, and then effort is made to make the system more fair, and do you think that the group that historically had the advantages there are being discriminated against and has to work to stop things from being made more fair?
I've never been asked this question before. Let me think about it.
Because the analogy being that...
Is it discrimination to ask someone to not discriminate and to
no longer benefit from an unfair system? And that to me is what we're asking there. And so while the athletes in those other sports, I don't blame them, but it was a system that was unfair. If you're taking labor that was earned by someone else, or profits that were earned by someone else, and then reapportioning this to another person, then that's not a fair system. So if we want to say, okay, well, we like that system, fine, but don't say that it's unfair to put the money where it rightfully belongs, and and then taking it away from where it was diverted, but there was no legitimate claim for that.
I might be so upset that I just stormed my country's capital. Yeah, I'll just blow it up. If I got to share, no one's going to have anything. See, that'll be my attitude.
Hey, well, it's an observed phenomenon. Some people feel that giving up an advantage is akin to, oppression. Like if you have an advantage, you got to give that up. There are many people that will feel like just giving up the advantage to go to a level playing field is oppression. So, I mean, we're going to see that pushback.
I guess.
So that's why
the thing about it, if you've been pampered by, I mean, this could go as an individual thing. Like if you have a child that grew up being spoiled and then they're being told not to, that they got to share after being spoiled for their first 10 years of their life.
Correct.
They're going to feel like something's wrong, right? Everyone else might just say, hey.
In that case, it's not as evident because you're talking about the same child. But if you're talking about like generations, it actually will feel unfair if why do I have to face a lesser or a worse relatively worse? It might be a fair system, but a relatively worse situation than why do I have to pay for the sins, so to speak, of my great grandfather, so to speak? But again, you have to be careful. Anytime you're talking about moving to something that's fair, you can't then, even if what's fair isn't advantageous as you would have liked, you got to be really careful saying, oh, well, it's unfair to move to a system that's more fair, because it's not fundamentally unfair to move to a system.
I'm just smiling. I know we're going to get out of here. No, but I know we're done. But I'm just going to say this. Those are the people that are most easily manipulated, because
I think history has shown that as well.
Oh, very good. Yeah. So, but that's a whole nother discussion.
Yeah, for sure. So, all right. Well, we'll get out of here for this topic. Please join us for our next topic. And we appreciate you for joining us on this topic.